The great space station called Convergence Prime floated in the darkness between three galaxies. It was the largest meeting place in the known universe. Here, the most powerful species came together to talk, trade, and make peace. Today was special. Today was the Centennial Accord, a great treaty that happened only once every 100 years. Representatives from 12 different alien species had gathered. They came in ships of gold, crystal, and living metal. They came with armies and advisors and ancient knowledge, and among them, standing alone in his simple gray uniform, was Commander Elias Vance. He was human, 34 years old, tall with tired eyes that had seen too much death and too much space. His brown hair was cut short in military style. His face carried small scars from battles he never talked about. Humanity had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. That was nothing. Some species here had been flying through space for 10,000 years, some for even longer. To them, humans were like babies who had just learned to walk. Elias knew this. He had heard the whispers when he entered the great chamber. He had seen the looks, some curious, some amused, most dismissive. The chamber itself was magnificent. It was a perfect circle, with seats rising up like a stadium. Lights floated in the air without any wires. The floor was made of something that looked like frozen starlight. In the center stood a speaking platform where each representative would present their case. Elias studied the other delegates as they took their positions. The Chthons were easy to spot. Massive reptilian beings with 4 arms and scales that shifted color with their moods. Their ambassador was old, very old, and his scales had faded to a dull bronze with age. The Morvathi were there too, beings made of living gas contained in mechanical suits. They hummed constantly, a sound like distant music. But it was the Velanthi who drew the most attention. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their bodies were humanoid but covered in crystalline structures that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Their eyes were compound, like insects, but somehow still expressive. They could speak with their voices and also with their minds. And their queen had come in person. Queen Silthari Velkan sat on a floating throne of purple crystal. She was young, only 25 in human years, but she ruled an empire that stretched across 800 worlds. She had taken the throne 5 years ago after her mother's death, and she had proven herself to be brilliant, cold, and utterly without mercy. She was also very beautiful, in the way a blade is beautiful, dangerous and perfect. Her compound eyes swept across the chamber and stopped on Elias. He felt her gaze like ice water running down his spine. She smiled, a small, cruel smile, and looked away as if he was not worth her attention. The proceedings began. One by one, the representatives spoke. The Chthons wanted new mining rights. The Morvathi wanted protection from pirates in the outer sectors. Each species had their demands, their offers, their careful political games. Then it was Elias's turn. He walked to the central platform with steady steps. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed nothing. He had learned long ago to hide his fear. "Representatives of the Galactic Assembly," he began, his voice clear and strong. "I come on behalf of the Human Confederacy with a proposal for expanded trade routes and mutual defense agreements. We offer access to our manufacturing capabilities, our medical technologies, and our—" How quaint! The voice cut through the chamber like a knife. Everyone turned to look at Queen Silthari. She had not stood. She had not raised her hand for permission to speak. She simply interrupted as if Elias was nothing more than a servant who had spoken out of turn. "Please," she continued, her melodic voice dripping with amusement, "let the dirt crawler finish. I find this entertaining." Some delegates laughed. Others simply watched with cold interest. Elias felt heat rise to his face, but he kept his expression neutral. "As I was saying—" "Tell me, human," the queen interrupted again. Does your species still measure time by the rotation of a single unremarkable rock? Do you still count your tiny lives in such small numbers? She tilted her head, her crystalline features catching the light. 70 years, yes? 80 if you are lucky? My grandmother's pet lived longer than that. More laughter now. Louder. Elias stood perfectly still. Your ships are slow, the Queen continued, clearly enjoying herself. Your weapons are primitive. Your understanding of the universe is like a child's drawing compared to a master's painting. She gestured dismissively. Perhaps the human confederacy would better serve the galaxy as a mining colony for the Valanthi Dominion. At least then you would have purpose. The laughter stopped. Even the other delegates seemed uncomfortable now. The Queen had gone too far, but no one dared to challenge her. Elias took a slow breath. He thought about his crew, the ones he had lost at Titan Station. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, who was only 7 years old and had his eyes. He thought about every human who had ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. He would not give this Queen his anger. She did not deserve it. The proposal stands, he said calmly. Every point, every term, humanity does not beg. He gathered his documents with careful, unhurried movements. He gave a small, respectful nod to the other delegates, even to the Queen, though she did not deserve that either. Then Commander Elias Vance turned and walked toward the exit. He did not look back, not once. The chamber fell silent. No one had ever responded to Queen Silthari's mockery with such quiet dignity. They had expected anger, or shame, or desperate pleading. They had not expected this. Silthari's smile faded. Something flickered in her compound eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or the smallest seed of doubt. But Elias did not see it. He was already gone. His communication device buzzed as he walked through the station's corridors. He pulled it out and read the encrypted message from Earth Intelligence. Anomaly detected in Sector 7 Gamma, unknown origin. All species long-range sensors have failed. You are the closest asset. Investigate immediately. Priority, maximum. Elias stopped walking. He read the message again. Something was out there. Something that scared the intelligence officers enough to use the word maximum. He changed direction, heading for the docking bay where his ship waited. The treaty could wait. Politics could wait. If something was wrong in Sector 7 Gamma, someone needed to find out what it was. And apparently, that someone was him. Behind him, in the great chamber, Queen Silthari watched his departure on a floating display screen. She told herself she was glad to see him go. She told herself he was nothing, just another primitive creature from a primitive world. But she could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her before he left. There had been no hatred in his eyes, no fear, just a quiet kind of strength that she did not understand. "Your Majesty?" one of her advisors asked. "Shall we continue with the proceedings?" "Yes," she said, forcing her attention back to the chamber. "Of course." But some small part of her kept wondering about the human who had walked away without looking back. The ship was called Perseverance. It was not a big ship. It was not a beautiful ship. But it was fast and strong, and it had kept Elias alive through many dangerous missions. He sat alone in the cockpit, watching the stars blur past as the ship traveled at maximum speed. The journey to Sector 7 Gamma would take 6 hours. 6 hours of silence and darkness, and the soft hum of engines. Elias used this time to think. He thought about Queen Silthari and her cruel words. He thought about how the other delegates had laughed. He thought about humanity's place in this vast universe, so small, so young, so easily dismissed. But he did not feel sorry for himself. That was not his way. Instead, he reviewed the mission briefing on his screen. The information was limited. 3 days ago, long-range sensors had detected something strange in Sector 7 Gamma, an energy signature unlike anything recorded before. Then, one by one, every sensor in the area had stopped working. Ships from 4 different species had been sent to investigate. None of them had returned. No distress signals, no messages, just silence. Now it was Elias's turn. He checked his weapons, he checked his shields. He prepared himself for whatever waited ahead. 6 hours later, the Perseverance dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered Sector 7 Gamma. At first, Elias saw nothing unusual. Just empty space, distant stars, the normal darkness between worlds. Then his instruments began to fail. The navigation screen flickered and died. The communication system filled with static, then went silent. Even the basic sensors started giving impossible readings. Negative temperatures, distances that made no sense, energy levels that changed every second. Elias felt cold fear creep into his chest, but he pushed it down and kept flying forward. That was when he saw it. A tear in space itself. It was not a black hole. It was not a wormhole. It was something else entirely. The tear looked like a wound in the fabric of reality. Edges ragged and bleeding darkness, center filled with something that was not light and was not shadow, but something in between. The tear was enormous, bigger than a planet, bigger than anything Elias had ever seen, and something was coming through it. Slowly, like a creature waking from ancient sleep, a massive shape emerged from the tear. It was a ship, or maybe it was alive. Elias could not tell. It was black, but not the black of space. This was a hungry black, a black that seemed to eat the light around it. Elias tried to send a warning to Earth. His communication system was dead. He tried to turn his ship around. His navigation system refused to respond. He was trapped. Then the voice came. It did not come through his speakers. It came directly into his mind, cold, ancient, and curious. You are unexpected. Elias grabbed the sides of his chair, fighting against the pressure in his skull. Small, brief. Your life is measured in mere rotations of a single star. Yet you came here alone. Why? For a moment, Elias could not speak. The voice was too powerful, too overwhelming. It pressed against his thoughts like a weight trying to crush him, but he was human, and humans had always been stubborn. Because someone had to, he said out loud, his voice rough but steady. There was a pause. Elias felt the presence in his mind shift, like a giant creature tilting its head to examine a small insect. Interesting. Your species is unknown to us, young, fragile, and yet there is something in you, something we have not seen before. Who are you? Elias demanded. What do you want? The voice seemed almost amused. We are the Voidborn. We existed before your universe was born. We have waited in the space between spaces for eons beyond counting. Now our prison door is open and we are hungry. Images flooded Elias's mind. He saw ancient civilizations, species that had lived millions of years ago, being consumed by the darkness. He saw worlds turning to dust. He saw stars going dark one by one. He saw the end of everything. Your galaxy is young and full of life, the Voidborn continued. It will feed us for a very long time. Elias struggled to think. His head was pounding. His vision was blurring, but he forced himself to focus. The other ships, he managed to say, the ones that came before me, what happened to them? They are part of us now. Their matter, their energy, their memories, all consumed, all useful. The coldness in that statement was absolute. No cruelty, no pleasure, just hunger, pure and simple. You will join them soon, small creature, but first you may watch. Watch as your universe becomes our feeding ground. Back on Convergence Prime, the Great Assembly was still in session when the alarms started. Red lights flashed. Warning sounds filled the chamber. Delegates looked around in confusion and fear. A massive display screen appeared in the center of the room, showing sensor data from across the galaxy. In Sector 7 Gamma, a fleet of impossible black ships was emerging from the tear in space. 5 ships, then 20, then 100. "What is this?" the Morvathi delegate asked, his mechanical voice trembling. Queen Silthari stood from her throne, her compound eyes fixed on the screen. "Some kind of invasion, but from where?" "There is nothing in Sector 7. The old Krythan ambassador had gone very still. His scales had turned pale gray, the color of terror. "No," he whispered. "No. It cannot be." Everyone turned to look at him. "Ambassador?" Silthari demanded. "What do you know?" The Krythan's 4 hands were shaking. "There are forbidden archives, records from before our written history, tales we dismissed as mythology." He looked at the screen with ancient eyes. "The Voidborn, the Eaters of Stars, the hunger that came before light itself." "You speak of children's stories," Silthari said dismissively. "I speak of extinction," the Krythan replied. "These creatures destroyed civilizations that were old when my species was still swimming in warm oceans. They cannot be fought. They cannot be stopped. They exist outside our reality, beyond our physics. Our weapons will be useless against them." As if to prove his words, the screen showed 3 Valanthi warships engaging the Voidborn fleet. Energy beams and missiles flew toward the black vessels. They passed through like light through smoke. Then the Voidborn ships moved forward, and the Valanthi warships simply vanished, absorbed, gone. The chamber fell into shocked silence. Through the static and interference, a broken transmission reached the station. Elias's voice, weak but clear. "This is Commander Vance. Human Confederacy. I have made contact. The Voidborn. They exist outside normal space. Standard weapons useless. But I have an idea. Need time. Need someone to keep them busy." The transmission dissolved into noise. Silthari stared at the screen. The human was alive. He had information, and he was asking for help. "He is one man in a small ship," her advisor said. "What can he possibly do?" But Silthari remembered the way Elias had stood before her mockery without flinching. She remembered his quiet strength, his steady voice, his refusal to beg. Maybe he was just a primitive human from a primitive world, or maybe he was something more. "Prepare my flagship," she ordered, "and mobilize the entire Valanthi fleet." Her advisor stared at her. "Your Majesty, you cannot be serious. The Krythan said these creatures cannot be fought." "The Krythan said our weapons are useless," Silthari corrected. "He did not say we should do nothing while the universe burns." She looked at the screen one more time. "And apparently, there is a human out there who thinks he has a solution. I want to know what it is." She walked toward the exit, her crystalline form catching the red warning lights. "Your Majesty," her advisor called after her, "what about the treaty? The accord?" Silthari did not stop walking. "If the Voidborn win, there will be no treaties. There will be no accords. There will be nothing at all." She disappeared through the doors, leaving the assembly in chaos behind her. The battle was a disaster. The combined fleet of 12 species, over 3,000 warships, had gathered near Sector 7 Gamma. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Valanthi crystal destroyers flew beside Krythan battle cruisers. Morvathi energy ships hummed next to human frigates. They faced the Voidborn armada together, and they were losing. Queen Silthari stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Throne. It was the most powerful warship in the Valanthi fleet, 3 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack planets, shielded by technology perfected over 10,000 years. None of it mattered. She watched in horror as her ships fired everything they had at the Voidborn vessels. Plasma beams, gravity torpedoes, antimatter missiles, crystal lance cannons that could cut through anything. Every attack passed through the enemy like wind through fog. The Voidborn did not even slow down. "Full barrage!" Silthari commanded. "All weapons! Fire everything!" Her crew obeyed. The Eternal Throne unleashed enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The nearest Voidborn ship absorbed it all without a scratch. Then it moved forward. Silthari watched as 3 of her escort destroyers tried to flee. The Voidborn vessel touched them, just touched them, and they dissolved. Metal, crystal, flesh, everything, gone in seconds. Consumed. "No," Silthari whispered. "This is not possible." All her life she had been taught that the Volanthi were supreme, the oldest, the wisest, the most powerful. Other species were beneath them, especially young races like the humans. Now she watched her mighty fleet being eaten like insects. The communication channels were filled with screams, Krithan captains roaring final battle cries, Morvathi ships singing death songs, human voices calling for help that would never come. One by one, the lights on her tactical display went dark. Each light was a ship. Each ship held hundreds of souls. In 20 minutes, the combined fleet lost 400 vessels. The Voidborn lost nothing. On the other side of the battlefield, Elias was still alive. His small ship, the Perseverance, had managed to escape the Voidborn's attention. He was too small, too insignificant. The ancient creatures were focused on the larger prey. But Elias had not been idle. During his contact with the Voidborn consciousness, he had learned something important. The creatures existed partially outside normal space. That was why weapons could not touch them. They were like shadows, present but not solid. But shadows could be affected by the right kind of light. Years ago, human scientists had tried to build a new type of faster-than-light engine. The experiment had failed badly. It had created something called a phase resonance field, an energy wave that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The project was abandoned. The technology was considered useless, but Elias now realized that this useless technology might be the only thing that could touch the Voidborn. He had sent a message to Earth, requesting the prototype phase resonance emitter. But Earth was 3 weeks away at maximum speed. The galaxy would be dead long before help arrived, unless someone bought them time. Elias studied his sensor readings. The Voidborn were emerging from a massive tear in space, a doorway to their dimension. That doorway was anchored by something deep inside the tear, a structure of some kind. If that anchor was destroyed, the doorway would collapse. The Voidborn already in normal space would be trapped here, cut off from their home dimension. Trapped shadows might become solid. Solid enemies could be killed. It was a desperate plan, a foolish plan. But it was the only plan. Elias opened a channel to the fleet. His transmission was weak, broken by interference, but it got through. "This is Commander Vance of the Human Confederacy. I know how to stop them. The tear in space has an anchor point. If we destroy it, we can cut them off. But I need time to reach it. Someone needs to keep them busy." On the Eternal Throne, Silthari heard the transmission. Her advisor shook his head. "One human in a tiny ship? He wants us to die so he can attempt some foolish mission? Ridiculous." But the old Krythan ambassador, who had joined Silthari on her flagship, spoke quietly. "The human may be right. The forbidden archives speak of the Voidborn's doorways. They require anchors to remain stable. If the anchor falls, the door closes." "And how do we know this is not a trap?" the advisor demanded. "How do we know the human is not lying?" Silthari thought about this question. She thought about Elias standing alone before her mockery. She thought about his calm voice, his steady eyes, his dignity in the face of humiliation. That man had not been a liar. That man had been something she did not fully understand. "He is not lying," she said finally. "I do not know how I know this, but I do." She opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Queen Silthari of the Velanthi Dominion. We cannot defeat this enemy with our weapons, but we can buy time. The human commander has a plan. We must give him the chance to execute it. Protests erupted across the channel. Fear, anger, despair. Silthari's voice cut through them all. I know I have been arrogant. I know I have mocked those I considered beneath me. Today, I have learned that pride means nothing when darkness comes to devour us all. She paused, her compound eyes fixed on the void-born fleet. We fight not because we can win. We fight because if we do not, no one will be left to remember that we existed. We fight because that is what living creatures do when faced with extinction. The channel fell silent. Then, one by one, ships began to respond. Krithan Third Fleet, standing ready. Morvathi's Song Carriers, awaiting orders. Human Battle Group 7, holding the line. Even the species that had laughed at Elias in the assembly hall were willing to die beside him now. Elias watched the fleet regroup on his sensors. They were forming a defensive formation between the Voidborn and the tear in space. They were going to shield his approach with their own bodies. He felt something tighten in his chest. These were the same beings who had dismissed humanity as dirt crawlers. Now they were preparing to sacrifice themselves for his mission. He opened a channel to the Eternal Throne. Queen Silthari, this is Commander Vance. Thank you. There was a pause. Then her voice came through, stripped of all arrogance. Do not thank me, human. Just succeed. Another pause. Elias, why are you doing this? Why would you die for people who treated you so badly? Elias thought about the question. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. He thought about all the children on all the worlds in all the galaxy who would never grow up if he failed. Because the people back home, my people, your people, everyone's people, they did not mock me. They are just trying to live. They have families, they have dreams, they have futures. He took a breath. That is enough reason for me. Silthari was silent for a long moment. I mocked you, she finally said. I called you a dirt crawler. I said your species was worthless. I remember. I was wrong. Her voice was quiet now, humble. I was so wrong. Then prove it, Elias said. Give me the time I need. And when this is over, if we survive, maybe we can start again. He ended the transmission and pointed his ship toward the tear in space. Behind him, the combined fleet charged at the Voidborn Armada. They could not hurt the enemy. They could not win, but they could distract. They could delay. They could buy precious minutes with their lives. And ahead of him, the darkness waited. Elias pushed his engines to maximum and flew straight into the mouth of oblivion. The space inside the tear was like nothing Elias had ever seen. There were no stars here, no light, no up or down. Just endless darkness that seemed to press against his ship from all sides. His instruments showed impossible readings, temperature below absolute zero, distance measurements that changed every second. Time itself seemed to move strangely here. Elias gripped his controls tightly and kept flying forward. The Perseverance was shaking badly. The hull groaned under pressure that should not exist. Warning lights flashed across every panel. His ship was not built for this place. Nothing from normal space was built for this place. But he kept going. In the distance, if distance meant anything here, he could see the anchor. It was a massive structure, like a tower made of frozen darkness. It pulsed with energy that hurt to look at. This was what kept the doorway open. This was what allowed the Voidborn to enter normal space. Destroy the anchor. Close the door. Simple. Except nothing about this was simple. The Voidborn consciousness pressed against his mind again. You are persistent, small creature. Most beings lose their sanity within moments of entering our realm, yet you continue. Humans are stubborn, Elias replied through gritted teeth. It is one of our better qualities. Stubbornness will not save you. Nothing will save you. We have consumed civilizations that lasted millions of years. Your species is a heartbeat, a single breath. You will be forgotten before we finish feeding. Elias ignored the voice and focused on his target. The anchor was getting closer. He could see strange shapes moving around it, guardians of some kind. Smaller void-born creatures that protected the structure. His weapons would be useless against them. But his ship itself was solid matter from normal space, matter that the void-born could touch, and matter that could touch them in return. If he could crash his ship into the anchor at full speed with his reactor set to overload, the explosion might be enough. Phase resonance technology worked both ways. His reactor existed partially in multiple dimensions, just like the Voidborn. It was a suicide mission. Elias had known that from the beginning. He thought about his daughter, Maya, 7 years old, brown hair like his, smile like her mother. He would never see her grow up, never walk her down the aisle, never hold his grandchildren. But if he did nothing, Maya would die anyway. Everyone would die. Some choices were not really choices at all. Behind him, at the edge of the tear, something unexpected happened. A Valanthi flagship entered the darkness. Queen Silthari stood on the bridge of the Eternal Throne, watching the void swallow her ship. Her crew was terrified. Many of them were praying to gods they had not believed in since childhood. But Silthari kept her expression calm. "Track the human's signal," she ordered. "Follow his path exactly." "Your Majesty," her navigator said, his voice shaking, "our hull is already taking damage. We cannot survive long in this environment." "Then we must be quick." The ship groaned and shuddered. Crystal panels cracked. Systems failed one by one, but the Eternal Throne pushed forward, following the trail left by the Perseverance. Silthari did not fully understand why she had come. She told herself it was strategy. The human had information that could save the galaxy. If he died before sharing it, all was lost. She needed to support his mission. But deep inside, she knew the real reason. She had spent her whole life looking down on others. She had mocked and dismissed and humiliated anyone she considered beneath her. And then, when true danger came, it was one of those lesser beings who had stepped forward to save everyone, while she had done nothing but watch. That needed to change. Elias saw the Valanthi flagship on his sensors and could not believe his eyes. "Queen Silthari? What are you doing here?" Her voice came through the static-filled communication channel. "Providing support, Commander. Did you think I would let a human have all the glory?" Despite everything, Elias almost smiled. "Your ship is too big. The Voidborn will notice you. They will attack." "Good. Then they will not be paying attention to you." As if hearing her words, the guardian creatures around the anchor turned toward the Eternal Throne. They moved like shadows with teeth, fast and hungry and wrong. The Valanthi flagship opened fire. As expected, the energy weapons passed through the creatures without effect. But the creatures could affect the ship. They swarmed over the Eternal Throne, tearing at the hull with claws made of darkness. Crystal shattered, metal bent. Crew members screamed as sections of the ship were torn away. "Silthari!" Elias shouted. "Get out of here! You cannot fight them!" "I am not fighting them," she replied. Her voice was strained but steady. "I am distracting them. Keep going, Commander. Finish your mission." Elias hesitated. Every instinct told him to help her. But if he turned back now, everything would be lost. He pushed his engines harder and flew toward the anchor. On the Eternal Throne, Silthari felt her ship dying around her. The Voidborn were everywhere now. Her crew fought bravely, uselessly. Some tried to seal damaged sections. Others fired weapons that did nothing. Many simply died, consumed by the darkness that poured through the breaches in the hull. The void-born consciousness spoke directly into her mind. Young queen, you are far from home. Your empire, your power, your pride, none of it means anything here. You are just meat and crystal, waiting to be absorbed. Scifi felt the cold touch of despair. The voice was right. She was nothing here. All her arrogance, all her certainty. It had been built on lies. She was not supreme. She was not special. She was just another creature waiting to die. Then she heard another voice, a human voice. Do not listen to them. Elias had opened a communication channel even while flying toward the anchor. His voice cut through the Voidborn's whispers like sunlight through shadow. They want you to give up, he said. They want you to feel small and helpless. That is how they win. Not through strength, but through despair. They are right, Scifi whispered. I am nothing. My whole life has been a lie. Maybe, Elias admitted, but you are here now. You came into the darkness to help a human you mocked just days ago. That means something. That proves you can change. I cannot fight them. I cannot do anything. You are wrong. You are Volanthi. Your people are telepaths. The Voidborn attack the mind. You can fight them there, not with weapons, but with will. Scifi stared at the darkness pressing against her bridge windows. She had never used her telepathic abilities for combat. That was considered primitive, beneath the dignity of a queen. But dignity meant nothing now. Only survival mattered. She closed her compound eyes and reached out with her mind. The Voidborn consciousness was vast, ancient, overwhelming. It was like trying to hold back an ocean with bare hands. But Scifi did not try to hold it back. Instead, she did something unexpected. She let it in. She showed the Voidborn her memories, her fears, her regrets, every cruel word she had ever spoken, every being she had hurt with her arrogance, all the shame and guilt she had hidden beneath her crystal crown. The Voidborn fed on despair, so she gave them despair, but not the kind they expected. She gave them the despair of someone who had wasted their life being cruel. The despair of realizing too late what truly mattered. The despair of wanting to change and not knowing if there was still time. It was not a weapon. It was a confession. And somehow, impossibly, the Voidborn paused. You regret, the consciousness said, sounding almost confused. You feel pain for pain you have caused others. This is unfamiliar. It is called conscience, Scifi replied. Maybe your species had it once before you became monsters. The pause gave Elias the opening he needed. He reached the anchor. Elias looked at the anchor towering before him. It was massive, dark, pulsing with energy that should not exist. This was the heart of the Voidborn invasion. Destroy this, and the doorway would collapse. The enemy would be trapped. The galaxy would have a chance, but destroying it meant dying. Elias began the process of overloading his reactor. Warning messages filled his screens. The ship's computer begged him to stop. He ignored it all. He thought about Maya one more time. His little girl. His whole world. I am sorry, sweetheart, he whispered. Daddy has to go away for a while. But I am doing this so you can grow up, so you can see the stars, so you can have the future you deserve. He wiped his eyes and pushed the throttle forward. The Perseverance shot toward the anchor at maximum speed. Then something hit him from the side. Queen Scifi had used the last of her ship's power to intercept him. The Eternal Throne was barely functional now. Most of the crew was gone. The hull was torn open in 100 places, but the engines still worked, and Scifi had used them to push Elias off course. What are you doing? Elias shouted through the communication channel. I was seconds away. I know, Scifi replied. Her voice was weak but determined. And I cannot let you do this. The anchor must be destroyed. Yes, it must, she paused. But not by you. Elias understood suddenly. No, Silthari, no. Your species may be young, she said, but you have taught this old queen something important. You showed me that true strength is not about power or pride. It is about sacrifice. It is about doing what is right, even when no one is watching. You do not have to prove anything to me. I am not proving anything to you, Elias. I am proving something to myself. She began the process of overloading her own reactor. The Valanthi flagship, the most powerful ship in her empire, turned toward the anchor. My people will need someone to teach them, Silthari continued. Someone to show them that other species are not beneath us, that we are all equal under the stars. I was too proud to learn this lesson until now, but you already know it. You have always known it. Silthari, please, go home, Elias. Go home to your daughter. Tell her that a queen from the stars gave her life so that little girls everywhere could keep dreaming. Before Elias could respond, Silthari used her telepathic abilities one final time. She reached into his ship's computer and overrode his controls. The Perseverance turned around against his will and shot back toward the exit of the tear. No! Elias screamed. Silthari! He watched on his rear sensors as the Eternal Throne flew into the anchor. The collision was spectacular. The Valanthi reactor, combined with the strange energy of the anchor, created an explosion that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Light and darkness merged. Space folded and twisted. The anchor shattered into 1 billion pieces. And Queen Silthari Vel Khan, ruler of 800 worlds, disappeared into the light. The effect was immediate. Outside, in normal space, the tear began to collapse. It shrank rapidly, pulling at everything near it. The void-born ships that were still emerging were caught in the collapse. They were dragged back into their dimension, screaming in frequencies that no living creature could hear. The void-born already in normal space suddenly became solid. They were no longer shadows. They were now physical beings, and physical beings could be killed. The combined fleet, battered but not broken, opened fire. This time, their weapons worked. Plasma beams tore through void-born ships. Missiles exploded against dark hulls. Crystal lances cut through enemies that had seemed invincible just moments ago. The battle turned. Within an hour, the remaining void-born were destroyed. The threat was over. The galaxy was saved. But the celebration was muted. Everyone knew the price that had been paid. 3 days later, search teams combed the debris field where the tear had been. They found pieces of the Eternal Throne. They found fragments of the anchor. They found the remains of countless ships and countless lives. But they could not find Commander Elias Vance. The Valanthi insisted on continuing the search. They owed the human a debt that could never be repaid. Their queen had sacrificed herself, yes, but she had done it to save him. To save everyone. On the 4th day, a young Valanthi officer detected a faint signal, a heartbeat. They found Elias floating in a chunk of wreckage. His ship was gone, his suit was damaged, his oxygen was almost empty, but somehow, impossibly, he was alive. A piece of his own hull had shielded him from the worst of the explosion. Luck, perhaps. Or perhaps something more. They brought him to the medical bay of a Valanthi cruiser. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was a holographic image floating beside his bed. It showed Queen Silthari, young and proud, wearing her crystal crown. The new Valanthi Council ordered this placed here, a medical officer explained. They wanted her face to be the first thing you saw when you woke, to remind you of her sacrifice. Elias stared at the image for a long moment. She saved my life, he said quietly. Twice. She saved everyone's life. Because of you. 1 month later, the Centennial Accord was reconvened. The Great Chamber on Convergence Prime was full again. Representatives from 12 species had gathered once more. But the atmosphere was different now, humbler, more united. The Valanthi sent their new leader, a council of elders who had chosen to rule together rather than crown a new queen. They said that Silthari's sacrifice had taught them that no single person should hold absolute power. When Earth's proposal was presented again, it was the Valanthi Council who spoke first. The Valanthi formally endorse full partnership with the Human Confederacy, the eldest counselor announced. Let history record that when darkness came for us all, it was a human who walked into oblivion so others could see the light. He looked directly at Elias, who stood among the Earth delegation, still healing, still tired, but present. We mocked them, the counselor continued. Our queen mocked them, and they saved us anyway. That is strength. That is honor. That is what the Valanthi would learn from humanity. The treaty passed without a single objection. Earth was no longer a junior member of the galactic community. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. After the ceremony, Elias stood alone by a great window, looking out at the stars. He thought about Silthari, about her cruelty and her pride and her final, selfless act, about the change that had happened in her heart in just a few short days. He thought about humanity, about all the times they had been underestimated, all the times they had proven everyone wrong. He thought about Maya, waiting for him back on Earth. He would see her soon. He would hold her in his arms and never let go. The old Crethan ambassador approached him slowly. Commander Vance, the ancient reptile said, I have lived for 600 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve and go extinct. But I have never seen anything like what you did. I did not do it alone, Elias replied. Silthari made her choice because of you, because you showed her what courage looks like, what compassion looks like. The Crethan shook his great scaled head in wonder. Give humans 200 years, and they humble queens and seal ancient evils. Give them 1,000. He made a sound like grinding stones, his species' version of a laugh. The galaxy had better be ready. Elias smiled sadly. We just want to live, he said. We want to explore. We want to learn. We want to find our place among the stars. You have found it, Commander. You have found it. The Crethan walked away, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts. He looked out at the endless darkness sprinkled with points of light. Somewhere out there, new challenges waited. New enemies, new friends, new wonders. Humanity would face them all, not with the oldest technology, not with the most powerful weapons, not with ancient wisdom or superior numbers, but with courage, with compassion, with the stubborn refusal to give up, even when the entire universe said they should. That was the human way, and now the galaxy knew it. The end.